I wasn't sure how I would intro today's video other than to say I called this project Sack Slap, because as old as my bones may tell me, I'm still apparently 12 at heart, so let's slap some sacks. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dev Diary, a series where I try to make my own video games. So if game dev videos are your thing, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you don't miss future videos. Okay, so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. It's typical top-down controls for the player with WASD. They can attack with a left click, which is a universal function shared with the player's CPU opponents. There are 3 attacks: slap, pound, and kick. Each attack has their own base damage and cooldown rates, along with a sticker to represent their physical form in the world. The slap is a basic and fast short-range melee attack. The kick is a longer but somewhat slower attack by comparison. Then there's the pound attack, a very slow but powerful AoE-based attack. And as mentioned earlier, these attacks have base stats. And so depending on the rarity quality of the attack, these stats are altered, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. Now when dropped, they are represented by these little stickers, which the player can read at any time by hitting tab. Now the cool thing here is that the game will automatically compare the player's currently equipped attack with any nearby stickers and display the results in either green for better or red for worse. And indeed, if I had had more time, sorting through the loot would have probably been done more like a Path of Exile or something. Now the player will throw down with other CPU enemies who all have the same abilities as the player. And for the sake of scope, they're somewhat simple in their behavior. It's a free-for-all, so these units will seek out the nearest target to their position, and when near enough, they will attack it. They will also passively pick up weapons if they're better, should they be near one. However, their priority is always to attack first, with any collecting being more of a secondary result of their actions. Which suddenly reminds me for no particular reason that if you enjoy the content, supporting me on Patreon is the best way to help me keep making it. Doing so can get you access to exclusive content and downloads, and even early access to the weekly Dev Diary videos before they're released on YouTube. So weapons aren't the only thing that can be collected. These big old boxes, which spawn randomly in the world when the game begins, contain goodies. How many and what quality is based on the box itself. The rarer the quality, the bigger the box. Now to open these boxes, the player must remain within a certain distance. This is indicated by a meter that appears showing the current progress of opening said box, and moving away or attacking will cause the meter to slowly drain. Once open, there is a chance for loot, flares, and weapons to drop. Now we've covered weapons, and loot is an arbitrary collectible that would, represent all the actual loot that we would see in a game like this. But the flares are what bring this project full circle to the extraction concept, because the player can use that flare to call an extraction event. Now again, for the sake of scale, this wait is only like 10 seconds, and the player has like a minute to extract before the flare goes out. But during the duration of the flare, it will attract any nearby CPU units to its position, and if the player isn't careful, the CPU unit will steal the extraction exit. And with flares being so rare, it's important to not waste them. Extracting will allow the player to not only carry over their weapon, but also any flares collected to the next level. However, losing all health, which by the way there is no way to heal, this will result in a game over elimination. This resets the player's weapon to a basic level weapon, and their entire inventory is reset to 0. Now the one thing I wanted to highlight here is the visual scale. First with the boxes, but also the sacks/bags that each unit carries around. Now these 2 items in particular are actually vector graphics, which basically means that they can be scaled up and down with very little to no loss in quality. Now we've played with vectors in the past with varying degrees of success, but GameMaker's recent addition of SVG support inspired yet another attempt at using vector graphics. There are obviously like some technical concerns, for example, performance versus PNGs, but it does seem like with proper optimization, it really shouldn't be that big of a deal. But regardless, it's just fun to see that the player's sack grow with more and more loot collected over time, But anyway, while I've been wanting to do things more in the extraction genre, today's project was more focused on the testing of vector graphics. Also, extraction games are quite ambitious, which is why a lot of things are streamlined, like with the loot and the enemy behavior. So if we were to do more extraction type games in the future, what would you like to see tackled next, and what other wacky ideas could we add to the genre? As always, I'd love to hear from you, so be sure to share your thoughts and ideas in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like. With that said, brings us to the end of today's Dev Diary, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.